Ready for the recording? Okay.
Go ahead.
Motion to close the closed session
And open the open.
And open.
and motion to open
The open.
the
I
open.
second.
Okay. We need a vote?
Oh, yeah, you need, someone's got a second.
I second it.
Okay, get a vote?
Chairwoman Miss Cynthia Schaefer,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ms. Ursula Domji,
Yes.
Mr. Randy Block,
Yes.
Mr. Jim Ferrero,
Yes.
Ms. Lindsay Cool-Bringell,
Yes.
Ms. Lorette Cortina,
Yes.
Ms. Donna Drews.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to resolutions.
This is resolution number 2024-12. This is for CE Main Street LLC, Block 41, Lot 63, 181 Old Croton Road, BOA 06-2024.
Can you both read the caption on the resolution and give us the date and the version number?
Yes, sir. Okay, this is resolution memorializing grant of a planning variance pursuant to NJSA 40-55D-36. Oh, John, from NJSA 40-55D-35 and 2C variances to allow the construction of a new single-family dwelling and associated improvements on a lot not having frontage on a fully improved street. And this is version 2024-12-1, version number 2.
Okay,
And I apologize, everybody. This was from the last meeting, but unfortunately, they were not able to
right, this one
have
was,
the
right,
resolution
this was
adopted
tabled
because of
because they
escrow.
hadn't paid the escrow, now they've paid the escrow, so now this should be adopted.
Okay,
Eligible to vote tonight is Domji, Schaefer, Block, Ferrero, Drews, Cretina. If anybody wants to make a motion?
So moved.
I'll second. Roll call?
Okay. Sorry. Chairwoman, Ms. Cynthia Schaefer,
Yes.
Vice Chair, Ms. Ursula Domji,
Yes.
Mr. Randy Block,
Yes.
Mr. Jim Ferrero,
Yes.
Ms. Donna Drews.
Yes.
Ms. Lorette Cortina.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the applications for this evening, BOA case number 06-2022. Applicant is Nicholas Caracappa. Location Block 37, Lot 2, 14 River Road. Time extension request to relocate shed as part of a condition of approval.
Could we ask Jeff to please read the applicable condition in resolution 2023-15, which they seek to modify to extend the date? He says in his letter that a condition, he doesn't say which one, required him to move the shed by December 26, 2024. And he's completed the removal of the chicken coop, which is the location the shed's going to be relocated to. And he found a professional who's capable of moving it, but they need some more time. But what is the condition number?
I apologize, I don't have the resolution.
Okay, that's all right. Can you go on the computer and get 2023-15?
It is condition number 8.
Can you just read condition number 8 into the record? I know, it's small
The
print.
entire paragraph? Okay. The applicant shall apply for and obtain a zoning permit and all construction permits for the relocation/construction of the shed by August 1st, 2024.
Okay, so stop for a second. Did they get the permits?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, keep on reading.
In parentheses, which is within 6 months of the date the within resolution is adopted. If during said 6-month period or extension thereof as granted by the board, the applicant fails to obtain a zoning permit and all.
All the approvals are
And all
going to
construction.
expire, right? Read the next sentence.
The applicant shall have 6 months from the day of issuance of the zoning permit to relocate, construct the shed, and obtain a permanent certificate of
Okay,
occupancy for
so
the shed.
now it makes sense.
Mhm.
So that's why he says that they have until December 26, 2024 to relocate the shed, because that's 6 months from the date of the permit
Mhm.
which issued on January 26, 2024.
Mhm.
So he's requesting a 12-month extension from December 26, 2024 to December 26, 2025.
Mhm.
So that's what the request is. So the board you have options. You could say no, but I don't advise that option. You could say yes, but not a year, or you could say yes, a year. So you guys should talk about it.
I'm okay with yes, a year. It's a residential.
So everyone's fine with yes, extend it a year to December 26, 2025. Is that correct?
Yes.
So someone just make a motion then to modify that condition, to extend the time to move the shed to the compliant location to December 27, 2025.
So moved.
I'll second.
Chairwoman, Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Vice Chair, Mr. Russell Adamchi,
Yes.
Mr. Randy Block,
Yes.
Mr. Jim Ferrero,
Yes.
Ms. Lindsay Cool Brengel,
Yes.
Ms. Laura Cortina,
Yes.
Ms. Donna Drews.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next application, BOA case number 08-2022 and 15-2023. Applicant is Apex Temp Treatment Center. Location is block 16.01, lot 69.03, 6A Minnetonka Road. Application, time extension request to obtain certificate of occupancy. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Kara Kaczynski, law offices of McNally, Yaros, Kaczynski, and Lyme here this evening representing the applicant. I do want to thank this board for this last minute addition. I found out at 10:30 this morning that there was this extension that was required. My client via their contractor were of the understanding that everything had been resolved and that there would not be any issue with the issuance of the CO by the time period that's outlined in the resolution, which would be January 2nd of next year. However, after receiving Mr. Vaccarella's letter, we now learn that was incorrect, and that's why we're here tonight requesting the extension. The condition number 4 of the resolution is what we're asking for relief from, very similar to the one that Taylor recently indicated. We must obtain the CO within 1 year of the issuance of the first construction permit. The first construction permit was granted on January 2nd, 2024. So our year is up January 2nd, 2025. So we're requesting a year extension of that time period, which I can tell you right now, my client will.
Okay, that's not what you asked for. You asked for 1 month, to February 2, 2025. I think what you probably intended was to ask for January 2, 2026, or take a look at the first paragraph in your letter says, condition 4 stated they have until February 2, 2025 to obtain a construction permit. The first one was issued January 2, so you have till January 2. Oh, I see. You have
Yeah.
till January 2, 2025. You want a year extension to
From that
January
date,
2,
correct.
2026.
Correct.
Now, Jeff, let me ask you something. Is it as simple as this or not?
I mean, the condition itself, yes, a year, it's simple for a year, but there was a review done where there may be other relief that's required as far as.
Put it this way, at this point, do you know that there's other relief or?
Yes, based on the as-built and the resolution, the relief that was granted, there was a washing station that was granted. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it was granted as a setback that.
Let me just make a suggestion. Let's assume that Jeff is correct. That unless the applicant comes back and requests more relief, they're not going to get a construction permit. If the board doesn't modify and extend this, their approvals are going to expire on January 2, 2025, okay? That's 2 weeks away. So it would seem to me, assuming Jeff's correct, which we don't know if he is, but knowing Jeff, he probably is, I would think that unless the board wants to hear this case all over again, you should grant them an extension, and the likelihood is they're not going to use it. They're going to have to come back and get more relief, but at least their approval won't expire.
Right.
And I can tell you, Madam Chair and the board, I had a lengthy discussion with my client about this today. We discussed every item in Jeff's letter, and we will be prepared to respond. How we're going to respond, we have a couple ways to deal with it. We will figure that out once we get past this hurdle, but we're aware of it. We will address it. And hopefully won't be back before the board, but if we need to be, we will be. But we need to get over this hurdle first.
Okay, anyone have an issue with extending it for 1 year? Hearing none, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Can I get a vote?
Chairwoman Cynthia Schaefer,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mr. Rasul Adamchi,
Yes.
Mr. Randy Block.
Yes.
Mr. Jim Ferrero,
Yes.
Ms. Lindsay Cool-Bringell. Yes. Ms. Lorette Cortina. Yes. Ms. Donna Drews.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to the next
you again.
application for this evening. BOA case number 21-2024, applicant Pioneer Developers LLC. Location is Block 36, Lot 13, 180 Pennsylvania Avenue. Application amended preliminary and final site plan with bulk variances.
Good evening again, Madam Chair, members of the board, Kara Kaczynski, McNally, Yaros Kaczynski, in line here on behalf of this applicant, Pioneer Developers, Inc. This is with regard to the property located at 180 Pennsylvania Avenue, Block 36, Lot 13, and this property is located in your I-2 zone. We're here this evening requesting amended preliminary and final site plan approval with bulk variances. And what this is for, as I'm sure you know, is in connection with a deviation from the prior approval that resulted from additional disturbance that was done in the field to address some issues that had arisen during construction. Specifically, we're asking for this relief with regard to, again, amended preliminary and final site plan approval. The bulk variances relate to additional tree canopy removal for a total of 81.09%, whereas the previously approved amount was 79.96%.
Because, let me get everyone sworn in. Let's get, you have, looks like
Just Chris.
Chris Nesser. So all professionals, please stand up. Raise your right hand. Does everyone swear or affirm the testimony they're going to give in this proceeding is going to be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
I do.
Okay, can everyone identify themselves for the record, starting down with Chris Nesser?
Christopher Nusser, Nusser, the applicant's engineer slash planner.
Okay, and at the underlying hearing, when the board approved the application and adopted resolution number what?
2021-16.
Were you qualified as an expert in that proceeding?
No, I was not here for that proceeding.
Mr. Ingram was here for that
Yes.
proceeding. All right, can you just get him qualified, please?
Yes, can you please give the board the benefit of your education and experience?
Certainly. I graduated from Rutgers University in 2006 with a Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering. I am a licensed professional engineer and planner in the state of New Jersey. Both of those licenses are in good standing. I have been practicing land use engineering since graduating college and have appeared before over 70 boards in those professional capacities and been accepted as an expert, including this board many times.
Any questions?
First, is anyone in the public other than people related to the applicant? You guys related to the applicant? So there's no one in the public. You accept Mr. Nusser as an
Yes.
expert in engineering and planning?
Yes.
Okay, now hold it. Let's get our identified for the record.
Brian McCarthy as the. Jeff Raritan Township planner. Don Thomas, Ford Landscape Park.
Okay. Now, Mr. Thomas, do you agree that what they're seeking, because they need, is an 81.09% tree removal, whereas the prior resolution approved 79.96%? Or is there some other percent that you believe they require?
Yeah, I guess there's I came up with a different calculation.
What's your calculation and why?
Let me,
No. That's words in your mouth, but I read your memo, and is it your belief that even though some trees are currently alive, because they've damaged the root system, that they're going to die, and therefore they should be treated as if they're going to die and they're going to be removed because there's no way they're going to live? I think that's
correct,
pretty-
and we prepared a a sketch showing the tree canopies.
You have a percentage?
Bear with me a second.
Yep, take your time.
So we calculated the total area of the root zones for the trees that were disturbed, trees that were in areas that were either filled or regraded at 38,730. And I believe the applicant used an aerial photography, current aerial photography, because it shows the construction of the building and the grading. They used that as a way to estimate the, well, it does illustrate where there are still standing trees. And it's my opinion that it's likely that many of those trees will not be standing.
So again, is there any, do you have a percentage calculation based on the area that in your opinion should be treated as the trees are going to be removed because it's your opinion that those trees are not going to survive? And if you don't,
I don't.
okay, well,
I
he's
thought I
testing.
did, which is why I'm
Yeah.
floundering here. I
So
apologize.
while he's testimony, can you do some calculations with he's testifying? Keep on going.
Thank you. And that issue that was just raised by Mr. Thomas is something that we will be willing and ready to address tonight with a potential resolution. But for purposes of just continuing with the opening, that is the first variance that we're asking for. The second is for a proposed monument sign, which we're proposing to be located 5 feet from the right-of-way of Royal Road, which is Barbers Drive, whereas 10 feet is required. So just to give you a little bit of the history of this matter, as Mr. Drill indicated, this application was previously approved via Resolution 2021-16. This board approved the construction of an industrial complex consisting of 3 industrial buildings, along with off-site construction of parking spaces, banked parking spaces, loading spaces, sidewalks, and your typical associated development with that. The required relief included D1 variances and numerous C1 and C2 variances, all of which again were memorialized by way of this resolution. When we started construction, there were some field conditions that were encountered. And as a result of that, there was some additional disturbance over and above what was.
Yeah, what were the field conditions that were encountered? I know you can't testify. Is Mr. Nusser able to testify about what field conditions were encountered that caused all the additional disturbance? Yeah, I didn't think you can be. I think you may have to call one of your client's representatives because they're the ones that said they hit field conditions. I don't think your engineers know what field conditions they encountered.
Well, I don't necessarily know that that really matters. We're not here for a field change. We're just here requesting the amended approval. I don't have my contractor here. And again, that wasn't really meant as evidentiary for the board, just more to indicate that this was not a purposeful mechanism whereby we were looking to provide additional square footage of disturbance.
Well, that's what they might want to, make that determination themselves. The only way they can make that determination is to hear from the people who did the extra disturbance and ask them why, what happened. If it was a field condition, what was the field condition? If it was because you weren't following the plan, they might want to ask them, did you purposely not follow the plan, or was that an accident? But we'll see what the board wants, if they want to ask any questions. I wanted to know if you knew or if Mr. Nusser know, but the two of you don't know. You've been told by your client that the contractor said it was a field condition, correct?
Again, while things were encountered in the field, there was additional disturbance that resulted from that, be it because of topography issues, be it because of tree locations that couldn't be moved. But again, it was things that were discovered during construction as opposed to, again, we want this to be larger and that's why we're going.
So let me ask you this. When they encountered these field conditions, did they call up the township engineer or the township planner to say, hey, we encountered a field?
John, we're here tonight as a mea culpa. We know that we did something improper. We
That's
understand
better.
that.
Okay.
We apologize. It was not purposely done. We are trying to be here right now tonight to rectify it as best we can. I cannot go back in time. I can't do something different. I'm not the contractor. But we are here. We understand what we need to do. We've worked very hard with your professionals, with numerous site meetings, numerous phone calls. We've reviewed every single review letter that they have. And we believe that what we're presenting to you tonight is not only an accurate depiction of what was disturbed and what's going to be returned, but also to address what we believe is most important, which is the tree canopy issue and some potential concerns of Mr. Thomas with regard to trees that may be also affected by this. And we think we have some very good ways to resolve that, not only for now, but also going forward for the township by way of some bond proposals that we have that will enable you to draw from as necessary for what is essentially unknown conditions. I mean, we know there was additional disturbance. We know what that square footage is, but the issues with regard to the trees and whether or not they're going to die, that's a speculative potential question. I'm certainly not doubting Mr. Thomas's expertise, but we don't know if that's going to happen.
Do you have a landscape expert that's going to testify?
We have a landscape report from our landscape.
Yeah, but do you have a landscape expert that could testify that Mr. Thomas's opinion is incorrect, and in fact, those additional trees that he thinks are going to die, that your landscape expert doesn't think they're going to die?
Again, I'm not discounting his statement, but I don't even think he's sure they're going to die. There's a possibility.
Mr. Thomas, let me ask you this.
What is your opinion on the chances of those trees surviving that had their the roots damaged?
There's going to be a percentage. I don't know what, are they all going to die? No.
50%?
It could be 50%. I don't know.
Keep on going.
So again, that.
Do you
was-
think you could just sit to be closer to the microphone just for the recording?
Sure.
Thank you.
Just trying to give some respect, but yes, if that's easier, that's totally fine. So anyway, that was a solution that we were trying to come up with to address that issue. That is.
It makes it hard to understand what happened. I mean, we have Jeff's report and everything that's occurred there. And it would have just been nice to hear from the other side of what happened, because Jeff's report is pretty thorough. And it looks like there was a disregard for a lot. If there were truly conditions, it would have been nice to hear that. I understand your position. I have concerns.
I agree with that too.
Yeah.
mean,
And
The report is very detailed here. And by the way, just for the record, I'm also agreeing with the chairperson about your landscape expert. If you want to argue with John Thomas, then we need to understand both sides.
Understood.
Right, and I think it's a matter of accurate representation, because there was both on-site and as critically off-site impacts and clearing that was not permitted or authorized under the application. I think the board has to look at those issues very clearly. And in looking at the plans and the documentation submitted, we don't have clear acreages for every individual off-site impact along the driveway, along the municipal property, along the other properties where clearing was done. There's general blobs, but the limited clearing, does that include the areas off-site that were cleared, or just the areas within the boundary of the property? So is that 4% those areas, or is it everything that was cleared illegally?
It represents, what's shown on the plan represents the totality of what was cleared, the limited disturbance irrespective of lot lines. So,
So it's total disturbance, even if it was over the lot line.
correct.
Mr. Thomas, you agree with that?
That sounds right.
Okay.
And I do have my client here who can testify as to his understanding of what happened in the field by way of the individuals that were involved. He is happy to come, give you best explanation he can.
We keep on interrupting your opening. Why don't you finish it, then if they have questions, they'll ask the client.
Okay. So basically, those are the variances we're looking for: tree canopy, the signage. The variance for the monument sign was added because we are here tonight and thought it would be a nice addition to the project. However, as I'm sure Mr. Drill will advise you, we need something in addition to the variance to occur. We need the township to either dedicate Barbish Road to my client or grant an easement for the proposed location. We have made a request of the township committee for either one of those two options. We have not heard back yet, presumably because we're here tonight and waiting to possibly see how this is going to go. But I can represent to the board that either if you do not grant the variance, of course, or we do not get one of those two options from the township committee, that we will withdraw any potential construction of that sign, and that will be removed from what we're asking for from this board by way of approval. I do have tonight my engineer and planner, Chris Nusser. As I indicated, we have reviewed and are prepared to respond to each item within the letters from your board professionals, as well as any questions of the
Yeah,
board.
one last question, and that is, so you sent over a letter which we had handed out to everybody December 19th, responding to the engineering letter 1 and responding, I thought it said it responded to the planners, yeah, and responding to the planning letter 1, but it doesn't respond to Mr. Thomas's. So I assume that Mr. Nesser is going to respond to Mr. Thomas's through his testimony?
Correct.
Okay. So normally, I always say when you go through these reply reviews, don't talk, go through item by item on this one.
Now, would you like us to start there, or would you like me to call my client up and
I think you should
discuss?
call your client first because that's the thing
That's
lurking
kind
behind
of
the
what I was
background.
thinking as well.
Yep.
Okay.
Can you identify yourself for the record, please?
Richard R. Radici,
Can you spell your last name?
Radici.
Okay, and you're the applicant's managing member, or you're a partner, you're a president? What?
Do you mind just speaking to the microphone? Just
I'm the
speaking to the
applicant,
microphone?
DMR Construction of Pioneer Developers, I'm sorry.
You're not the applicant. Pioneer Developers, Inc. is a corporation. You're the president?
Yeah.
Okay, so Richard Radici, and you're the applicant's president.
That's correct.
Okay, you can sit.
I'm okay. standing.
Okay, raise
You
your
don't
right
mind?
hand. You swear or affirm the testimony you're going to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
100%.
Okay. So can you explain to them, how did this happen? What field condition did they encounter that caused this to happen? And why didn't someone pick up the phone and call up the township engineering office or the planning office to tell them, hey, this is what's happening, we got to do this, is it okay?
Well, first of all, I mean, we've had a lot of equipment and manpower on the job to get this project started. And I mean, we never kept it a secret. I mean, everything was open. Survey marks were there. I mean, I believe the town was there. I wasn't there myself running the job.
Sir, I'm just
But-
gonna ask that you have it like as close as you can, just for the recording, just
But-
because
but-
I'm
but-
having trouble
Right.
hearing you.
What do you mean for
The
the?
microphone,
Yes,
right.
Okay,
into the
I'm
microphone.
sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, so the job has always been open to the public, to anybody from the town or anybody whenever like hiding anything. We just did the work.
Hold up. You can't be saying that because the job's open, that there's some burden and these guys should have been out there looking to make sure you didn't make a mistake?
No, but let me finish.
Okay,
Okay, he asked me to talk. Let me talk.
okay.
So there was a tremendous amount of dirt required movement on this job in the order of 200,000 cubic yards of dirt. That's 5,000 dump load, truckloads, 5,000. On the northeast corner by the DPW, they had a limits of disturbance that was, I think, maybe 10 feet to within the distance of the wall. This wall is probably about 20 feet tall, maybe 18, 17 feet. And the grades that they originally showed for the bottom of this wall weren't totally accurate. It's hard for them to depict exactly to the foot where the base of these grades of these walls are. So we have to meet the field conditions. And it's not like the surveys were way off, but they weren't exact where they were supposed to be at the particular location. And when you're moving literally 5,000 trucks of dirt, cutting it from the high side by the Royal Road, by Royal Road, cutting that down 16 feet and transporting all of that dirt to the other side of the mountain where we had to build the walls, there just wasn't enough room with the trucks and the bulldozers and the excavators to do that kind of work.
So stop right there. If that was the case, why didn't you call the township engineer or the township planner and say, we have a problem because we have to put in a 20-foot wall and we don't have enough room to do it? What should we do? Why didn't you call instead of them just doing it and going beyond the disturbance
I
line?
guess it was a mistake. I didn't think there was really a choice in the matter.
How
Maybe,
could there not
maybe
be a
what,
choice of picking up the phone or not picking up the phone?
because it's a limits of disturbance. It's not like we really went, so much, encroached onto additional impervious coverage or building coverage or pavement. It's really there's always a thing called construction means and methods. This was the only way that you really could build that portion of the job anyway.
So you did it and you're seeking after the fact approval instead of asking for permission first. You figured you might as well do it and then seek permission.
Yeah, it's a
after.
mistake.
Well, it doesn't sound like a mistake. It sounds like you made a calculated decision that you were going to do it and then you'd ask for permission later instead of asking for permission before you did it, right?
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
But we didn't have much choice in the matter, and unfortunately, we didn't call the city. We're just trying to get a job done. We didn't think it was that big of an impact, and
I agree.
I really didn't realize
I
it, that it
agree
was
you
going to
didn't
be this significant. It was this significant. Trust me, I would have never, ever done
So
it.
can I ask you something? If you went from an approval, the ordinance says, correct me if I'm wrong, that you can take down 55% of the trees on a site. Am I right or wrong? And the board gave you approval, which is unprecedented. They don't normally go this high, that you can take out almost 80% of the trees on the site. And you ended up taking out 81%. Okay, you could say, oh, it's only 1% more trees. How many trees does the 1% more trees constitute?
I mean, I could testify to that, because I guarantee it is not more than 5 trees. I can guarantee you that.
John, Mr. Thomas, you have an opinion on how many more trees were taken out than they were supposed to be taken out?
Well, right now, in the area that was disturbed, there were 81 trees where there was fill placed on the roots of 81 trees.
Well,
Okay,
yeah,
Hold on. I just want to clarify. Are we asking how many trees were removed? Or are we asking how many trees could have been affected by the additional?
First, I'm asking how many trees were removed, and then I'll ask how many are, in your opinion, negatively affected. But how many were removed? Is he right?
I don't know how many were removed. That's the answer.
Okay, in your opinion, 81 trees are
Impact.
negatively impacted? Okay. Do you agree that 81 trees were negatively impacted?
I don't know that one way or the other. All I just know that the trees removed were not more than 5 additional trees than were shown on the plan.
Just to clarify, I thought, were you the daily job supervisor?
I'm sorry?
Were you the daily job supervisor? 'Cause it
No, I was
started-
not.
Okay.
But you're the owner's president, and you obviously knew what was going on, because if you said that you guys made a decision to move forward after you hit this field condition of not enough room, so you went over the area of disturbance and asked for permission later, that had to be your decision at the highest level.
100%.
So he made the decision,
Yeah, I'm just,
okay?
to testify, only 5 trees were made. I would infer that he was there
Listen.
and had that experience.
He
No, no,
just-
but that I did verify with the field supers. I'm very confident that it wasn't more than 5 trees.
His testimony is it's 5 trees. Your board's expert doesn't know.
absolutely.
Your board expert says 81 were negatively impacted. He doesn't know.
Well, negatively impacted, I'm willing to put up a bond to say that those trees in those areas that he thinks might get disturbed, I'm not saying they won't be or they won't die. I'm willing to put up an insurance bond that guarantees to the city that if any one of those trees dies, we'll replace them in the size and caliber that we need to so that we can meet your requirements.
Okay. If anyone has any questions for him, just ask. him.
Does, when tree roots are disturbed and fill is placed around the trees, it creates a long-term decline of that tree. It also impacts stormwater management and runoff. it affects the ecological values of that soil. So are you saying, how do we put a value on all that? Because it's not just the trees, it's the whole thing. You've created compacted soils and impervious surface. So that's where a bond replaces a tree, but it doesn't deal with all those other factors.
And to your point, Ms. Drews, I understand what you're saying, and certainly those would be things that would need to be taken into account when determining the amount of the bond.
But that doesn't.
Again, we're not in the solution right now, right? Because I want to hear from John what he recommends
No.
to be done. Yeah.
Listen, they're starting. You got to hear from Chris.
Yeah.
But I'm not taking a position one way or the other, but the fact is that under the change in bond law, you couldn't require a bond. He's offering to post a bond. That's what I'm hearing him say.
Yeah, I mean, whatever damage, if it's an ecological issue, if it's a tree planting issue, whatever it is, one thing is we got to say is what we did, unfortunately, we did. Do I regret doing it? Yeah, absolutely. But we are here where we are. I can't change the ecological composition of the soil. I can't, prevent these trees from getting damaged, but I am willing to tell the city that I'm man enough to stand up and say, whatever cost value you think that could be an impact to the site, we're willing to put an insurance on that to do that. I mean, what else can I do here? I mean, we're sorry, we apologize. I know that doesn't mean anything, but we'll put up what we have to from an insurance to give you what you want.
Okay. All right.
Anyone have any other questions? Otherwise, do you guys don't have any questions for him?
I just question, did you seek approval from NJDOT and the municipality when you did the clearing on their properties?
Well, I don't know that we needed to seek, NJ, I'm sorry, what's your question?
She's asking, did you seek the approval of the property owners of the two other lots that were impacted?
Were you cleared?
Were you cleared?
Well, we didn't clear any of the trees on the adjacent
Okay,
properties.
where you put
We didn't
soil.
clear any
No, the
trees
answer to
there.
that is no.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why don't you, oh,
So you mentioned that the problem was generated because there was a problem with the height of the wall. Is that's?
Yeah, but there was
Was any of this caused was any of this caused by the need to get rid of excess fill on the site?
I mean, the elevations of the bottom of the walls are, what's there now are slightly different than what was proposed, because we had, different grades there we had to contend with. But it was,
That's not a question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
what
That's
does
not
that
the
mean?
question.
His question was any of the problem caused due to the fact that you had to export fill off the site? That's what he's asking.
No, it wasn't, we didn't use these extra areas to remove fill from the site, no.
And I honestly, I raised the question because when I first went out to the site, first of all, I just like to say that we went out to the site at the start of the job, like we always do, and we reviewed the limit of disturbance. It was staked accurately.
Who was there on behalf of the applicant or the applicant?
It was your project manager, Miss Robert.
Yeah, Bob Lockery.
Bob Lockery. Okay,
Is he
so.
an employee of Huntington?
He's an employee of DMR, yes.
Okay, so we reviewed that. I went out, the next time I went out was and that was in, I believe it was October of 2023, is when we noticed all the fill that was placed not only below the wall, but all around the site. And Mr. Lowry's response, I said, what's happened here? And he said, we had a lot of fill and we didn't want to haul it off site. That's what he told me at the time. So that's what I heard. And I just said, oh, we had a problem here, and that's kind of documented in my first inspection report.
Yeah, that wasn't my understanding of what happened there, but I can't deny whatever he told you, that's what he told you.
And honestly, there was that was one area, the area below the wall, but the area on the south side of the site was also, there was excess fill in that area. So that really didn't have anything to do with the wall.
Well, you notice that the wall on that side of the site is quite a bit different, you know, in a little bit with, compared to the original plan, because those grades were significantly different. So we had to alter the walls.
Was there a field modification for that change? in the-
Yeah, you have that in the as-bills, yes.
Well, not an as-built. So if there's ever a change in the grading, or if there's any kind of formal change that has to happen other than.
Microphone.
So instead of, if there's a small change, that can be a field change, but if there's something significant, such as the grading of the site needs to change, or there's the elevations of the wall need to change, or you're looking at the new slopes are going to be significantly different than what was on the plan. Typically, the way that goes through is there's a field modification that gets submitted either to the township engineer's office, to the planner's office. We look at it and then we see if it can be approved administratively, or if we get to the position where we are now, where we have to come back to the board to seek an amended.
Right, he already testified that they did not seek a field modification from the township engineer's office. He already said that.
Hey, John, I want to go back to his comment, and I'm just going to give my own view, personal view.
Sure.
Based on what you told me about field condition, I was buying into it until I heard what he said and those facts. So to me, the credibility of what you're showing from a field condition, I'm not saying it's not accurate, it's not complete. There's more which has happened. And I'm just being objective.
I'm not sure if I follow you, but
A question about the field, you didn't even bring it up or were aware of it. And that's one of the field conditions, which is significant.
well, I did say that I did go beyond the areas of disturbance.
You said it was about the
I
wall.
willingly knew that. We went beyond it. And then
I
most
don't
of it
need
was
to answer
because of the
to you.
extent
I'm
of
just
the
giving you
dirt
my
move.
view. I'm just giving you what
Yeah.
I'm hearing.
Okay.
I don't need to answer to you. It's just creating more questions. That's what I'm saying about the field conditions.
Listen, and again, I don't think there is any question that there was an exceedance, and that's what we're trying to resolve.
See, ultimately, I think, I'm always trying to think ahead. Let's assume that you present, evidence and argument that the board wants to grant amended preliminary and final site plan, and they want to grant the variance to allow the additional tree removal. Let's assume that. The question is going to be, there are a whole bunch of recommendations in the report, especially John Thomas's report. I think what they're thinking is, would they want to approve subject to those things being done, or would they want to see them done first? And a lot of it is going to be based on what your client's representative is saying, whether they have confidence that if they granted an approval tonight, subject to conditions, change this, change that, do this, do that, do they trust that they'll get done? Because if they don't, they might say, listen, if you do this, this, and this, and resubmit, come back in January, we'll give you an approval. I think that's what some of these questions to him are ultimately going to. I'm just reading the tea leaves.
From my point of view, that's exactly correct. We're very reasonable, as you know, so we'll find a way to make things work. But
Closer to that mic.
the confidence level, at least based on what I've heard so far. Okay. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
Understood, and I thank you for your clarity and, honesty and
Find a way
forthright
to
here,
work it out.
because that's ultimately where we would like to go.
Correct.
Obviously, we're here looking to get the amended approval so we can continue.
Right. You would like to get the approval tonight, and you're going to ask that all these things be made conditions. Understood. Why don't we, unless anyone has any more
No.
questions for him,
No,
let's
that's
get to Mr. Nusser.
Thank you.
Okay, Chris, you want to give a quick, well, I'll leave it up to the board. He was typically going to do a quick little overview as to where we are, but we may have had enough of an overview and you may want to hit right to the letters, so it's up to
I
you.
think we still need a little more.
Okay.
overview.
Yeah.
I mean,
Sure. Okay, and just one last thing. We asked Mr. Thomas, while he was testifying, to do a calculation
Yes.
of what he thinks the tree removal percentage is.
And again, this includes what was actually removed plus what you're concerned with may be impacted, right? That's what this number, just so I understand. for
Again,
my
I'm
purposes.
a little unsure because I didn't see anything in what came in, and maybe I missed it, about what was removed, actually removed
In other
beyond.
words, he has questions, once Chris testifies,
Got
he
it.
has questions, where did Chris come to the 81.09? Because John believes it is
84.9.
84.9.
But again, that
I
includes,
mean, we have a,
That includes all the areas of the trees, the canopies that exist within the disturb, that are impacted by all the trees that are impacted by the soil disturbance.
okay,
Some of those might be inside, slightly outside the disturbed areas, or inside, but they were all impacted because they impacted the root zones of the trees.
okay,
So
that's what I
therefore,
wanted to
so
understand.
therefore the canopies, therefore the trees have been impacted.
Okay, so that's 84,
0.9, and that's basically adding 38,700
31.
to the total tree canopy removal that was indicated on the original plans, that was 355.45. Which gets you to 389, 275, 245.
wait, hold on.
Just so you understand why he's saying that, because you're requesting the variance to go to 81.09. And if these additional trees die, it's going to put you into
I
a
knew that's where
variance
you were going with
situation.
that. That's what I just said to him 2 seconds ago. So if what we are discussing now is the need to have an accurate percentage of a variance that this board is going to hopefully grant, or at least have before you to consider,
Right.
then I don't have a problem with the 84.9, because that, I think, helps everybody and gets us to the end game, regardless of what may speculatively happen down the road with regard to these trees, which we are hopeful as a middle ground can be satisfied or resolved by way of a bond in whatever that amount may be, if we sit and consider all the things that Ms. Drews brought up, could be drawn from if and as necessary as things happen, if that makes sense.
Now, Mr. Nusser,
You said 84.9?
Correct.
Yes.
that's what Mr.
Okay.
Thomas says.
All right, give us a little quick overview. So we're not using these for exhibits?
Nobody indicated.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, it's okay. I
These
just
are,
wanted-
this is just, it's not an exhibit, it's just the submitted plan.
Okay, in other words, that's, the board has that in their
Yeah.
packet.
That's
just a
correct.
demonstrative exhibit, it's not getting marked, correct?
Correct. That's sheet 4 of the plan set, the site and grading plan.
Sorry, Chris, did you say sheet 4?
Sheet 4, yes.
Let's give us the date. It's dated September 30, 2024, and it's last revised 11/19/24.
That's, yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm playing the dance of how close to be.
Just one last, are you familiar with what percentage of trees they wanted to remove in the initial plan, which the board told them no, and told them to come back, and then they came back with the 79.96. Do you know what they had proposed before the 79.96?
No, I'm not aware.
I think it might be in the resolution, I'm looking at that.
I don't know if I put it in there or not. John, do you recall the percentage that the board told them, no, that's too much?
Well, to me, it was somewhere around 86, or it was.
Okay.
And the plans were modified. The building envelope didn't change, the parking didn't change, but they added some walls, added some height to walls. And that reduced the fill area, which reduced the impact on the trees, which lowered the percentage.
Okay, so that brought it, those plan revisions, which the board did approve.
Brought it down to
brought it
76.
from 86
So
down to, or approximately 86, best of your recollection, down to the 79.96.
That sounds right. Sorry if I don't.
So I have a question on that. Where the proposal, the plan they had, these walls and all that, did they implement those or they didn't even implement those?
He wants to know, are the walls where the walls are shown on the plan?
The large wall on the eastern side is where it is on the plan. On the southern side of the plan, the plan that was approved, I believe, had a two-tier retaining wall and a couple 100 feet long. And the one wall, a lot of those walls were eliminated, and instead the area was filled, which is part of what caused the problem on that side of the site.
You can see that. Even what we approved and had a discussion to
So
reduce from
so
86.
This is for the benefit of Mr. Nusser to address in his testimony.
You got the point, right? So what
No, we
we
understand.
approved-
Yes.
Okay.
All right, start her up.
It's loud and clear. Okay, so obviously, there's the big issue to talk about. There are a couple other things that are part of this application before you. So, let's make sure we hit everything. Number one is the proposed monument sign, which you can see located right at the,
Listen, the proposed monument sign,
yeah.
I don't think that's going to be a problem.
I know, that's why I said, but I want to put it on the record that I just want to point it out to everybody and
Actually, it's
to move
going
on.
to start with the winner.
Well, it's not necessarily starting with the winner, it's
Okay,
just
let's
start with the easy stuff. So the monument sign is located at the end of Barbara Drive, as I think Kara already explained. What's being requested as it relates to that, the sign's proposed at 5 feet from the Royal Road right of way. The anticipation is that Barbara Drive will be vacated in favor of this property. So the request would be to place it at 5 feet instead of 10, noting it being on the part of the property. In the alternative, that it doesn't get vacated, that we have it within an easement that the town would have to grant. In the alternative that neither of those happens, the sign would be placed where it was originally proposed inside the site as part of the original approval. The other item in here that's relief is the guide rail itself. The guide rail is not Core 10 guide rail, which is the brown, like aged look, rusted look guide rail. It's just standard galvanized guide rail. For the most part, the guide rail is along the wall in the back. It's not visible to anybody but on the site.
I'm sorry, could you repeat what,
Yeah.
you're coming through muffled. Yeah,
Am I?
yeah,
I'm sorry.
Loud.
I couldn't hear what the composition of the guardrail.
So the ordinance requirement is that Core 10 guide rail be installed, which is like the rusted look guide rail. And what was installed is standard galvanized guardrail. As I said, in the back of the site, there's guide rail on top of the wall. That is, again, it's installed, and it is not visible to anybody but those on the site. It's facing inward. And then there's this small section along the entry drive that similarly is tucked into the site. It's there. We're asking for the relief to let it remain as opposed to pull it out and landfill that material. From a visibility standpoint, from an aesthetic standpoint, it's hidden into the site and not visible from anyone. Would note that just trying hard to think of where in town there is Core 10 guide rail, and I think actually on Commerce over by the Home Depot there's a guide rail over there, and that's Core 10 all along Pennsylvania, including the new extension that they built, or the realignment that they did when they did Creekside. That's all standard galvanized guardrail, so it's not inconsistent with what's been done elsewhere in the township, and it's really just an aesthetic matter.
Let me just ask, in the board professionals reports, do you say anything about those guardrails?
No, I didn't see anything in there.
So in other words, you're not recommending as a condition of approval, if the board grants an approval, that they be removed and replaced You're all right with them remaining like that?
For at least for my opinion anyway, it serves the same purpose and it is at the rear of the site where nobody's going to see it. I know it's a township standard. And I think the idea was that because it's a township road coming in, it had to follow the township standards. And now we're kind of in this weird, we're not sure what's going to happen. So we wouldn't recommend to rip it out to replace it with Core 10, which it's mostly just an aesthetic thing. And it is at the rear of the site. So generally
Okay,
nobody would
so
actually.
this is a good
So
idea.
then I'll move
Go
on.
on all the issues that are not going to be controversial
So,
first.
so does that need then a design waiver?
I'm not sure where's it at in the ordinance.
It was on the
Microphone.
plan, so it's
Hold it, hold it. Right, but being on the plan just means you grant amended approval, poof, it's approved.
Right.
Is it, if it's required in an ordinance, a site plan or a zoning ordinance, then you'd have to add a piece of relief to allow it. If it's just a thing that it was on the plan, you guys wanted it that way, and it's not that way now, but you don't have a problem with it, and it doesn't need an exception or a variance, then we don't have to, well, at least the board officials don't have to worry about it, and the board, if they're fine with it, then we can go on to the next issue.
I don't know, I just know that it was township standards.
It should be relief from, it's a standard, so it's either a site plan.
Give me what's the ordinance? That's what I'm.
I don't have it written down. I'll have to look it up
All right,
for you.
somebody we're gonna let Jeff look at this as you keep on testifying. I just want to
Thank
find out
you.
where it is. If it's zoning, I have a feeling it's a site plan ordinance requirement, so it would require an exception to allow it to remain, which the planner and the engineer and the landscape architect don't have a problem with. And I have no opinion on that whatsoever. You found it? What is it?
Is it?
Okay, so what section are we in? 296?
296-75.
296-75. Is 75 a site plan design standard section?
Yes.
Okay, so now we're talking about an exception, but it's 296-75 what?
Section C, circulation and parking. 2, design standards for off-street parking areas. Under K, when guardrails are required, they shall be constructed of wood rails supported by wood or Core 10 steel posts as approved by the township engineer utilizing the detail approved for use on the Garden State Parkway.
Okay, and what did they put in?
A typical.
It's a standard galvanized steel rail.
Okay, and you guys don't have a problem with an exception being granted to allow the standard galvanized, correct? Board have any issues with that? No, great. Okay, next.
Perfect. There was some slight change where previously there were garage entrances, areas marked out on the larger building to the south, and that's now proposed as just being parking across. So there's some additional parking shown on the plan, which is noted in the.
Okay, on that
table.
one, is it just a change, so it's just an amended site plan, or does it have some ordinance standard?
There's just a change. There's
Just a
no.
change,
no-
okay.
Yes.
All
So,
right.
but were the doors not installed in, or is the parking conflicting with the doors?
The doors are not installed, but they could be installed. So at the present time, the parking is shown as such and will be installed as such, but so far as the relief that was previously granted for parking, we're asking for no change to that. So if they want to use the garage doors in the future, they can, it was just striping. It's a striping change. So they would just do a.
Yeah, so the relief that you granted before, since there's no change in the number of parking spaces.
Covers it.
Yeah, typically, again, this would be a modification, send it in, we look at it, we would say we recommend it to be approved administratively because there's no
Right.
impact to the previous
If
variance.
you asked, you would have gotten the approval, but you're at the board.
Oh, I'm,
There.
yes.
Board have a problem with this one?
No.
Nope. Okay, next.
Next is the big one. Next, we should, I'm going to flip over here to sheet 5.
Just before you start, John Thomas pulled out a memo that he wants to correct something.
This was from my initial report dated 4/12/21, and this was the review of the original plans that came before the board that were dated, well, last revised 3/25/21. And on those plans, the proposed tree removal was 87.4%.
Okay, so instead of, you estimated 86, you underestimated, it was 87.4%. Then your recollection what the board said, no to that, come on back, they came back with 79.96 by adding the retaining walls. Is that correct?
I think fundamentally, yes.
Okay. Anyway, go ahead.
So as it relates to the tree replacement, the mitigation here, I think the easiest way to do this is to just walk through John's
But
report.
before you do the mitigation, what is the basis that the board should grant the exception? Is the basis that because there's nothing you can do about it at this point, because what's done is done?
Unfortunately, yes, I think that's where we're at.
And so what you're basically saying is you can't.
I can't
plant a-
uncut down a tree.
Right. And how high were these trees?
They were mature trees.
So you can't plant a mature tree. So really, you're at the point of mitigation or whatever. So Mr. Thomas's memo cited this new ordinance that was adopted when?
Yes.
Loud, loud, loud.
It's ordinance number 24-12, June 5th, 2024.
So, first of all, in my opinion, because you need an exception, this is not covered by your final site plan protection against ordinance changes, which off a final approval, you have a 2-year protection period that if there's an ordinance change, it doesn't apply to you, and you get up to 3 1-year extensions. But if they come back and they need additional relief, the time of application law says the ordinance in effect at the time of the application applies. So 24-12 applies. So Chris, what are that ordinance says, basically, if the board grants an exception from the tree replacement requirements, there are basically 2 things that the applicant has to do, and that's at the option of the board, correct? One is replanting trees either on-site or off-site, and one is making a dollar contribution, which instead of being a $60 or $100 a tree, which was at the time of your approval where you said, no, we're not going to take $60 or $100 a tree. Now it says at market value. And Mr. Thomas, what in your opinion is the market value of the tree replacement that would be required under the new ordinance?
For the trees we use for reforestation, 7 to 10 gallon, inch to inch and a half, which need to be mulched and staked and so forth, market value is $300 a tree.
Okay, so what your 2 options are, or a combination maybe, replanting all these trees that you owe, either on-site and on and off-site, or $300 per tree goes into the township tree replacement fund, or a combination. The board's going to have to decide what it wants to do here, but what's the applicant's proposal? And in my opinion, again, is this ordinance applies now that you need the exception.
Give us a minute. We discussed this, but we're not sure where you were coming down on the old or the new ordinance.
Oh, it's the new ordinance, no question. You want to take a 5-minute recess to talk about it?
Yeah, yes.
Yes.
Calling the meeting back to order.
Carol, you know we're going to stop at 10, right?
Yeah, I know. That's why in the interest of time, I kind of figured, let us have our conversation and then here's what I'm thinking.
Guys,
Sorry, thank you very much. The professionals do have the responses to the letters and we have, or at least I think mostly addressed, John, your last letter of yesterday. We've had obviously a large discussion about the tree issue. We know we still have some work to do and I'd like to run a couple of things past the board. Before I do that, is there anything else that we need to address? I think everything else has either pretty much been agreed to.
So put it this way, I take it that the applicant agrees to any of the suggestions in the board expert reports as being plan revisions, they agree to that, correct?
Correct. Basically, it's outlined in my letter.
Well, and John Thomas's.
Correct, correct.
Well, I mean, I think we talked about John's letter. Do we want to just go through John's letter point by point quickly?
We can do that.
If we can
Just to
try
make
and do
sure.
it quickly. It's just to,
Yeah, go ahead and do that. And then I guess just to, I put some notes together before the meeting in addition to the ones I sent out, just as kind of a suggestion of definitively, here's what my recommendations are, just to, move it
Okay.
forward. So go through my letter, but remind me that I
Okay.
have these.
So just so the board can see where I'm looking to go after that. And then I would kind of like an indication from the board of what we're thinking with regard to the replacement payment, offsite replacement tree wise, and also the plan changes that need to be made that we're agreeing to in the professionals' letters.
okay. So starting on page 2 of John's report on the replacement trees. Just looking through here, John and I had a discussion earlier today, and I think one of the things that, we're showing 1-inch trees as our replacement tree size.
Let's just direct the board to where you are. in the letter.
Second paragraph of
Page 2.
page 2, number 2, page 2.
Thank you.
So it says we're proposing 233 1-inch trees, and as John and I discussed, the trees really in that size, they come as 1 to 1.5 inch caliper trees, and what the township and how you've approached it before is you look at that and you just take the average and you do 1.25 inch per tree, because they're going to be, on average that. And John,
Is that correct?
And that's correct. And, quite honestly, because of availability and a large quantity of trees, sometimes in the field, we make some decisions, we make some allowances to allow some trees that are a little smaller and balanced.
But in the field, that means they ask you about it, and you come out and you make an administrative field change.
Correct.
Okay.
so
So just for my clarity,
So hold on.
what
So
does these numbers mean? Like 587 inches? Do you agree with that or?
Yes, so what we were proposing on the plan was that 587 caliper inches of trees would be put on site. On the basis of this adjustment here, that the trees will be really 1.25 inches per tree. It will be 645 caliper inches of trees on site.
Okay, and let me just, I don't want to confuse, let me just qualify that by saying, I think one of the first things that needs to happen is that the plan needs to be revised to determine exactly how many trees are going to be planted on site. Because in my letter, I've pointed out some places where, for example, I don't think you'll be able to plant as many trees on the western part of the site because it's already a closed canopy. So that needs to be adjusted. There's another example is in the southeast corner of the site, there's a group of planting, which I don't think is on your site. That's off site if you look at the property line. And this came up in the prior plans and they were taken off and now they've kind of reappeared. So I don't think that's yours. So, and we don't need to get into the details, but I'm just saying we have to take the planting plan that you've submitted as part of the amended application, and it has to be adjusted. And we talked about, Chris, you and I talked about like the, less evergreens, more deciduous trees. Come up with the real plan. Then we'll know positively how many of these replacement trees are going to go on site. Then we'll know how many trees we have to deal with offsite. So that was going to be my first piece.
Understood. And certainly as part of the plan changes, we do need to do that so we can quantify that. I think on the basis of the offsite, what we would like to do is to have a mix of, John has some sites that are municipal lands, open space that is available for some reforestation efforts. We don't want to be planting in 10 different locations, but if there's 1, 2 locations where we can put a substantial number of trees, and there are a couple of those sites that he has identified where we can place replacement trees, we'd like to be able to do some of the planting ourselves, somewhere maybe a quarter to a third, and then make the contribution for the remaining trees.
So in your opinion, how many trees are we talking here?
They don't know yet.
So
For what, just to clarify?
With this proposal,
Proposed.
plant a quarter to a third offsite and make payment for the remaining
it's,
66% to 75%. He wants to know what's the total number of trees,
there's somewhere around 1,500 trees,
1,500 or 1,600?
1,500 trees, right? At it, if it's, I was looking at about, I mean, obviously the number is going to change a little bit based on what we can plant on site, but I was looking at about a little over 1,900 caliper inches of trees.
Yeah,
I
came out with 1979, and this was caliper inches.
Caliper inches, which is about 1,500,
Divided by
1.25, yeah.
And that addresses, that quantity addresses the original plan.
Just stop for a second. 1,979 caliper inches of trees, which equals about 1,500 trees from the prior approved plan. Right?
Correct.
Now, how did that relate to the 587 caliper inches, or what Chris just said, 645 caliper inches? Is that part of it or separate? That
And so the total required is 2,566.
so the total required
Yes,
is
it's
2,000.
right on the top line of page 2, 20.
2,566. And what you're saying is, what John's saying is 1979 are going to be either planted off site or paid for, and the remainder is going to be planted on site. Is that what we're saying?
Which we need to confirm.
And we need to, John, we need to confirm that number because that 1979 is based on what's on the amended plan or pretty close to it. And we're going to revisit that and it might end up being more or less. I don't know.
I have one more question on that. When we started this, we said there was a discussion between 81.9 and 84.9.
Mhm.
What does this represent?
It represents the 81 trees where
I'm talking about percentage.
The 84.9, because it includes the 81 trees that also include the ones that are impacted and removed by the additional limits of disturbance.
I'm
Is that
sorry.
correct?
No.
No, so the 81 is what has been cleared. The difference, the delta going up to the 84.9 includes the trees that have been impacted. Those trees are still there,
Yeah.
right? If you look at the
I'm
aerial, they're
just
still
looking
there.
for a number.
Yeah.
Whatever this number is, does it represent, because.
No.
Okay. So, John, does the 2,566 caliper inches include the trees whose roots have been damaged?
No.
But that's not what he was asking. He said,
Yes, it
does the
was.
84?
That's exactly what I was asking.
Oh, yeah.
81.9 did not
Over
include
the
that.
years, generally, I understand what he's asking. You ever see Johnny Carson with the?
I have, yes, Karnak. Okay, thanks.
His mind reading. So,
So then what's the number?
well, no, hold on. So that's the number for the replacement trees, the trees that are, so what we were talking about with the trees that are still there, that have roots that are damaged. The applicant had an arborist submit a report, a plan to John, a 5-year plan for remediating around them. John has some comments to that, and the arborist and John, I'm not trying to put too many words in your mouth, John, but please stop me if I'm speaking out of turn.
I will.
I know, I'm just saying it anyway. But he will meet with, the arborist has to meet with him and they need to make some changes to the plan to his satisfaction. So those trees would have the opportunity to stay. Those trees are mature and ideally they they remain. If those trees were to not survive, if any of those trees were not to survive, that's what we discussed earlier with having a bond.
I thought the bond was not only to cover any trees that died, but was to actually cover that 1,900 or 1,500 trees.
It's all it's the replacement tree. It's to cover the replacement trees. It's cover the replacement trees and cover for if the trees that have been impacted, if they come down, they would have to replace those trees, or they'd have to replace it, pay the amount. And in the case that neither of those happened, there is a bond in place
Correct.
where you can pull and you can do the replacement,
Okay.
right, to cover for all of that. So, right, and again, there's really, I don't know what else we could possibly offer in that regard, attempting to save the trees, right, doing
Okay.
the best we can to save those trees as we can, and putting a provision in place to putting a provision in place to ensure that if they do not survive, that they are replaced.
John, can you comment on what Krista said?
Yeah, I think the important thing here is that, is what I understand, that, and I haven't talked to the arborist yet. I've only seen a report. And my opinion is that we should do anything we can to save these trees that have been impacted. They have environmental value. They have, in my opinion, a really important value because they're screening and adjacent residential.
Right.
And they're 80-foot trees screening a wall that's 20 feet tall with a building that's 40 feet tall. So they're not replaceable within our lifetime. So whatever needs to be done. And what I saw just in general in the arborist report was, and with the preliminary soil reports, and we don't have to get into that, but well, we don't, we're going to use a method that injects fertilizer, and in short, I didn't think it was sufficient. And there is a method to deal with this because there's not much you can do after the fact, but they use a piece of equipment called an air spade. There are a couple ways to do it. They either loosen all the soil with the air under where it's been impacted, and then you're mixing in organic matter, or they actually cut radial trenches out from the trunk of the tree.
Is that in your report?
Yeah, I think I talked about,
Yes.
yeah, it's an inspection. They take it out, they put compost in. So that's what I'm thinking needs to happen. That's like, to me, you do anything you can to save the trees.
There's got to be some sort of notes, whatever, put on the plans to that effect, yes?
Correct.
Well, it would be,
And-
the
and-
arborist would update their
Plan.
plan.
The arborist had a 5-year plan. Like,
Okay.
we need to do this now, we need to do these things every year. And I think that's an approach to remediating the problem with the tree. I think that also should be the approach with the new tree planting, that the tree planting should be maintained over that period of time to get them established as quickly as possible.
Let's assume the board agrees with this. The question to the applicant, who actually does the work? In other words, who is the applicant going to hire to do the tree planting? Who is the applicant going to hire
Wait, to physically do the tree planting?
to do this method? Is the applicant going to do it itself?
Well,
Are you gonna have subcontractors? Is the arborist gonna-
I don't know that we know that now.
Yeah, I don't know that we know that. I don't know. Why do we need to know that?
Subcontractor or
Why do we need to?
self-perform? You know that?
Do
No,
we need to know that?
I didn't know.
Well, like this process, there are relatively few people who do. Bartlett Tree Experts has their own process.
I want them to
Right.
understand that this is not something that a landscape contractor is going to be able to do. This is not something that a site contractor is going to be able to do. They're going to need a specialty contract. I want to make sure that they're aware of it.
Yes.
John, my opinion, considering what we have gone through, I would want to know.
Well, when they come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you come back, it'll be nice to know who you have assigned these things.
Can you summarize, yeah, we wrote something down, that's 5 points.
Okay, summarize, we.
If you make me a copy of that tomorrow.
Okay, see you. Okay, all right. So I think the first item, it was meet with the arborist and do all these things we discussed for the remediation plan. And it should end up, in addition to his report, it should end up on the plan, because my sketch has the area disturbed and it has the areas of the tree canopy. So until now, we have to be explicit, and we have X number of square feet within those tree canopies. So whoever's doing the contract work knows they have to do the treatment for X number of square feet. So
Got it.
there's some details that we talked about. Is this going to be, I know it's the arborist report, he said, we're going to mulch these areas. Well, how much mulch, what kind of mulch, all that stuff has to be specified. So that all the details.
You need a more detailed report, and you need notes added to the plan that also copies those notes, so that whoever's doing the work has the plan, doesn't have to refer to some separate report.
Correct. And by getting all that existing tree information on the plan, then we can do a better planting plan. Because we know where the spaces, where the trees are, and where we can plant. So that's part of it. And that's item 1. Item 2 is revise the planting plan based on the remediation areas, which is what I just said. Show the canopies, a new planting plan, and the details which are in my report, different species and so forth.
And also address the issues of possibly things that are planted or proposed to be planted offsite. No, I'm sorry, hold on.
I'm not there yet.
No, hold on,
Yeah,
no, I misspoke. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I'm getting tired. That are proposed as what we thought was on site, but may possibly be off-site. That has to be addressed in the revised planting plan.
Sure.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
yep. Because once those two things are done and you have a better planting plan, then we will have an absolute number for the replacement trees on site, which is actually just so the board knows, it's a combination of the reforestation trees at the small size, as well as larger trees in the kind of open landscaped areas on the site, which is fine. And applicants proposed some 3-inch trees. It'll enhance their site, their trees, that's fine. We might change the species mix, but that's part of that final plan. I think the remediation plan, as well as the maintenance of all these reforestation trees that we want to get established as quickly as possible, should be part of that 5-year plan. So there's a 5-year maintenance. We did this years ago on the planting on Dayton Road. We had 99% of the trees take, because they had a maintenance contractor. Somebody was responsible to water. Somebody was responsible. They mowed the grass between.
Is that plan available?
I think we could, I bet we could dig it up. And that was a combination of, I can't remember the name of the community. Part of that was done on common open space land in the community. And if you go further down Dayton Road toward the railroad track, the township parcel on the right, that's where all those trees came from.
Okay.
And that could be 20 years ago, but that's how that happened. You won't find a gap in the trees there. Again, it was just because somebody was responsible to water when it was needed. It's not, and maybe they got lucky and it rained a lot, but that's what you have to do. Item 4 is the maintenance contract for the new planting, is the 5-year maintenance contract for the new planting. And item 5 was basically a discussion of the off-site replacement trees. What's the final quantity? And, is it, and when I wrote this, is it a fee in lieu? Is it replacement trees, or is it a combination?
So instead of talking exact numbers, since we don't have that yet, what's the applicant's proposal as percentage-wise?
I think we said quarter to a third.
Planted off-site,
Mhm.
and then 66% to 75% paid with the fee.
Of what doesn't fit on the
On the site.
property.
And one property, two properties, three, is it all over?
I think I think both John and I's opinion has been, I'll let John give his opinion and I'll agree
Well,
with it.
I think my opinion, as I said, we prepared some preliminary plans that to look at different properties, and I'd want to look at them again just to come up and that way we'll look at a property and say, okay, it's a concentrated area and there are 400 trees there, and I can't do that right now, so I don't know.
Yeah, but
One or
but
two.
the ideal would be that it be not a,
Not a lot of problems.
not more
Not
than
a
that.
lot of properties.
Yeah, I mean, and to be fair, hearing what we're hearing now too, I think we obviously have not only some work to do with these plans before, what I'm hearing from the board, you'd like to see these changes we've agreed to and bring them back.
Right, and the question is time-wise, because we figured out we have the reorg meeting where, and I don't know if that's gonna give you enough time, but if you want to go as fast as possible.
Yes.
The reorg meeting on January.
January
16th.
16th.
But isn't there some, like, John's
Even
report
John has to
requires some
meet with the
soils
arborist. I don't
testing
know
and
how-
Well, that's what I'm asking. I don't know if there's enough time for John to meet with the arborist, or for you guys, or hit the arborist, or actually.
I'm gonna lose my train of thought. I gotta write this down.
yeah.
Blah, 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 but that's the earliest date, and then the second date, I think, was February 20th.
Correct.
Because both of those meetings, I have one application on right now. Or cap it.
When would the plans need to be into the board? I think that's important as well.
10 days, we waive the
10?
21 days,
Okay.
and you can't complain when you get these reports the day before.
Yeah, I
We
mean,
don't
You didn't
complain.
complain this time.
We didn't.
No.
Well, and it wasn't the day of, it was, we got there before, so I think everybody did well. Just so I don't,
so well, just the 10 days before is the 6th, which is, I believe, Monday.
I don't think you're gonna be able to pull.
That's like
can't do that.
basically,
Impossible.
considering the holidays, 3 business days.
Well, then the next day is February 20th.
February 20th.
And if not, if you guys can't do that, I'm sorry. You don't have any, we don't have anything until the second meeting in March.
Yeah, you guys, so.
Actually, no, I'm
The
sorry.
hearing
I
is
take that
not
back.
gonna be continued
You don't, not until April.
To February 20th. No need for further notice.
well, hold on, what's going on? I'm very confused. We're setting November 20th?
No,
So February 20th?
Yes.
Would-
Because, I mean, it's gonna be impossible for you to get the plan revisions in 10 days before if we give you January
16th.
16th.
Okay, what, January 20th is available too, right?
No,
No.
February.
we only have one January meeting.
Come up to the microphone.
If I understand it, the time
Microphone,
restrictions-
please. Sir,
I'm
the
sorry,
microphone.
I'm sorry. I understand the time restrictions here. January 16th, I guess you mentioned, is probably going to be almost an impossible date. So realistically speaking, probably the February date, we can get almost everything that you want together, and I'm sure we'll work out the trees, the number of the trees, we're going to plant off-site, number on-site, the dollars we can exchange. And we'll get it right. We'll just do it the way we need to do it. The only thing I would like to ask you is that anything in the building that relates to, like, whether we gotta, finish up a permit or finish up an inspection or something, if you could at least let that go.
That's not up to the board.
Let us continue with that.
That's not up to the board.
I know, but that's kind of, the biggest thing, John, I'm a,
Officer and the construction official, sometimes what the board does is they ask them if they granted an approval before the resolution is adopted, they'll ask them if they would release the permits, but you don't have an approval yet. You totally.
I know, but I don't wanna-
Site plan.
I'm not asking, I'm not asking for CO or TCO, I'm just asking.
I understand.
Can allow us at least continue with some of that building work, so at least we're losing time, I'll get everything right for you for February. But at least all the other work is continuing, because we're just losing a lot of tenants. The building can end up being vacant more than it has to be, it's just, And I just, if you could work with us in that regard, we'll do everything we can to pay for your trees, replant trees and get it to your
Jeff's gonna have to
satisfaction.
consult with the township attorney. He's not gonna go out on a limb and have his derriere exposed.
I don't want
Something-
anybody, I
If
don't want
something
any,
goes wrong again, he's gonna have to.
I don't
talk
want
to the-
anybody to do that, John.
This is what I'm saying. He's gonna have to talk to the township attorney about that because the township attorney gives the zoning officer advice on those things. I'm just saying that in my opinion, the board can't direct any zoning officer to do anything. The only times the board has asked the zoning officer to do anything like this is when there's been
there's
an
approval.
approval.
Right, we don't
And
have-
it's, the only question is adopting the resolution. There is no approval. So in my opinion, if you want to ask him, you can, but in my approval, that would be inappropriate. He should be asking the township attorney. I don't want that on your back. I don't want that on my back. And I'm sure Jeff doesn't want it on his back. Because if something else goes wrong, anyone who gave you the okay is going to get in trouble. It's not just you. He'll get in trouble. They'll get in trouble. If they ask him and something goes wrong, they're going to get blamed. If Jeff makes a decision to give you that stuff and something goes wrong, he's going to get blamed. Let him ask the township attorney. If the township attorney gives him the okay, then if something goes wrong, the township attorney will get blamed.
Okay. Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
so we're gonna go back, we're gonna make these changes, we're gonna have these discussions, we will be back. We'll submit 10 days before February 20th, if not sooner.
Right.
And you're going to address, I have to put this out here. This board hasn't historically approved plans when it says we'll revise and accept as a condition. We want to see the plans revised. to
Correct.
address-
That's what I'm talking
Yeah, that's
about.
what she's talking
address
about.
all of it. So we're not going to get into this circle of,
Let me just ask this. I want to make sure, are there any
Never-ending
stormwater
changes.
issues?
I was going to say
So-
that, Donna, is there
Are there stormwater issues? Let's ask our township, let's ask our board engineer.
There's nothing, so stormwater related, they're okay. They're still meeting the requirements
Okay.
that are set forth by the state. I did briefly want to mention while I have the time, there was two things on, I'll give you the report dates that we have it. On our report dated December 13th, 2024. This is on page 3 of 4, item number 13A and B. So it looks like that there was, based off of the disturbance, they encroached into either a flood hazard area buffer or limit, and then there was a wetlands buffer. So we would ask that as a condition of coming back, so not as a condition of approval, but they would have to self-report that violation to the DEP. Whether DEP wants them to do a new freshwater wetlands permit, however they want to mitigate it, that'll be up to the state.
Okay,
as
they
far
should
as what they want to
CC
do.
that self-reporting
And yes,
to you and to the planning office.
yes.
Okay, what about stay on page 3 and go to stormwater management.
So, so stormwater management, it looks like from their previous stormwater management reports that they had submitted, they had an overcapacity in the basins that they had. So the only thing that really changed was the limit of disturbance. So they had to account for that disturbance with their new calculations.
And-
And they're still meeting the reductions that they had before. So at least according to your ordinance and what the state requires, they're still meeting all those.
Okay, but what you're
requirements.
saying is though, all these recommended changes,
Yes, they still need to be made.
they still have to be
Yes.
made.
Okay, okay.
So all the changes recommended in ERI's report dated December 13. Any changes that are recommended in Jeff's report dated December 16, and all the changes recommended in John Thomas's report dated December 18 have to be made and submitted.
And I don't have my final response in front of me, but I think that we agreed to make all of them. I don't think there were any clarifications. And if there were any clarifications, I think we've gone through them tonight. So I think we're okay. If we have any questions, we'll certainly reach out to the professionals and talk.
Okay,
I just want to try to say something. Just wanna
Go ahead.
get it before we close.
Okay, just one last thing that came up. I don't think there was an ENS plan in this revised submission, and I spoke with Mike DePalma at Soils last week, and he said, no, I haven't seen anything. So I think that needs to be.
Yeah, I
part-
talked to Mike this morning.
Okay.
And there is a plan in here, and I told him I will get him a copy of it.
Okay.
So I know
He hasn't seen it yet at this point.
Yeah.
The transmittal to him to
board professionals and the board secretary.
Yeah, when we revise the plans, we'll send the revised plan to Mike.
Okay, Karen.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, Carrie, you get the last word.
Thank you very much. So one of the things we'll obviously be considering is what we will want to propose with regard to the trees. I know we've talked about, we have to finalize the number. We've talked about a third and 2/3. We'll be discussing that a little bit more because obviously we have some, additional investigation to do in light of the number, the market costs that we've been talking about. Does the board have any insight, advice, thoughts, hard nose yeses, anything that we need to consider? Because our goal is to come back on the 20th. You've heard my client say how difficult this is. We know that we're here because of ourselves. We understand that, but I want to try to get everything resolved on the 20th. So if there's
The
any
only other thing,
advice you can give us
the
on
only
that
other thing
issue.
I would say is, in that ordinance 24/7 that talks about market rates for the trees, it also changed the relief that you need for more than 55% of mature woodland tree canopy to be removed. It's now a variance, not an exception. So just. I know
You're gonna have to
gonna
notice.
Apply for a C1 variance on the same basis you're applying for the exception, but I just want to just dot the i's and cross the t's.
So you're saying by that I can revise my application to request that variance
Right.
as and if necessary?
Correct. Just
When we come
to
back.
dot the i's and cross the t's, Chris said that you need an exception from ordinance 296-75C2K for the guardrail thing.
Yep.
Put that in a letter and then say that because you're going to be seeking, instead of going from, you're going to exceed the 55% limit on the tree removal, and you're going from the 79.96 that was approved in resolution 2021-16 to 87.4%, even though if the board approves it, there'll be some condition saying that you gotta try and do your best to not take any more out. But
Well,
the
well,
variance,
80
pardon me,
84.9.
No,
84.9, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
84.9.
I know what you meant.
Okay? No thoughts, no plans? We're good.
Okay, so
Okay,
again,
any thoughts
No.
on,
anyone have anything, in other words, what she's saying is, does anyone have anything else that they have on their mind that they want to tell them, so they have time to react to?
I guess the only other thing was in the John's report, it talks about the soil testing, additional soil testing.
Oh,
And,
yeah,
and-
when's that?
yeah.
Very good point. When's the soil testing
Well,
comes back? Because John needs to see that.
Yeah, it's,
Because if the soil testing's not back,
it will be back in advance of the submission date. Let's put it that way. It should be well in advance of that. The expectation is within a week or two, but the holidays.
yeah, I understand, but that is critical because that is what all three of these experts are basing a lot of what they're asking and what they're recommending is based on.
As soon as possible.
Yeah, as soon as it comes in, certainly it's,
Yeah.
and it has been to
Okay.
date. So as soon as
Okay,
it's
so again, one
available.
last time, the hearing in this matter continues to February 20th. No need for further notice, and you gotta make the submittal. All the revisions 10 days prior to February 20th.
And I believe their time right now is until mid-April. Do you want a time extension?
April 30th? Yeah, we're good.
All right, thank you.
thank you, everyone.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
April 3rd? April 3rd. Okay, we want to take April 30th. The extension.
And zero.
But it has a zero, right? So instead of 0403, it's 0430, yes?
0430.
Yeah,
Yes,
okay,
25, yes.
Okay. Extend it to April 30th.
okay. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Merry Christmas.
Happy Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah.